skipping lunch, and if you are, you can always say it's not skipping lunch, it's intermittent fasting. And that's great, apparently. So.
I think we could get started, actually.
Okay, let's jump to it. First of all, everyone, you are super welcome to this, would call it roundtable slash panel slash whatever is on our mind here today. And on the panel, we have some folks that will soon introduce themselves, but I would want to kind of like say that even though this is like a roundtable slash a panel, if there's anyone that has a question or you feel like you want to maybe steer the conversation in a different direction, feel free to raise your hand and just suggest. So with that said, we have a few people. We're hoping to kind of cover a few topics. We're hoping to cover the past, like what happened-ish 2022, but mostly we're looking to look at trends for 2023, 2024, and we're hoping to kind of cover NFTs, DeFi, maybe look into some like challenges that crypto has or blockchain has or Web3 has with sustainability and the ESG challenges. So I think that maybe we could just shortly before we start, we could just start with, on my screen we have Carrie from Dottyland, and then everyone can just quickly introduce themselves and what you're working on, and then we'll take it from there. Is that okay? Perfect.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Carrie. I'm one of the two founders of Dottyland. Actually, I think probably next to me for all of you. She's next to me in this screen flow here, but is my co-founder Ketli. So I will let her introduce herself. But what we do, or what we're co-founders of, is Dottyland, and what we do every day, or what we're building towards, is turning individual climate positive behavior into on-chain identities, what we call the impact selves. I hope we're going to have a little bit more kind of space to talk about it more widely through this event today, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But yeah, nice to be here, and thank you for having me.
Next one. I think you might be muted.
Okay, I didn't know what was the order, but anyways, following up here from Ketli, I'm Ketli, Dottyland's co-founder, and I'm not going to do the short intro anymore, but just give a bit of background to what I was working with before. I was something around 8 years in consumer finance, fintech, and we have our own story there of how we actually had our own personal dilemmas and conflicts with like not doing enough for the current climate crisis and the bigger problems that the world is facing. So that's how we started working together on Dottyland.
Thank you. Nipasi?
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Nipasi Siddiq. I'm the co-founder of Norn. Norn's mission is to onboard the Nordics into Web3. And we do that through education, inspiration, and also by helping people to really, take the basic kind of first steps into the movement. And that's where we are, focusing quite a lot on NFTs, and I think that's going to be a part of what I'm going to talk about today. Thanks.
Thank you. Johanna.
Hi everyone, I'm Johanna. I'm co-founder and working chair on Logcast. We're building the ultimate voice streaming platform, and I'm passionate about, and my whole team is living to connect people frictionless, and we think we can only do that by truly helping people to own their content and own their mind. So that's what I'm here to talk about.
Brilliant. And Michaela, not Feminvest today. You have a lot of hats.
No, Michaela Berglund. And you know what? I'm actually not the working chair, but I am the working chair for Hodl SPAC, as we actually is the first blockchain SPAC in Europe, and you'll learn more about us during this session. Hodl, and I have also the opportunity to, for Hodl, be most probably the first female chair of a blockchain SPAC across the globe and universe. So I'm pretty stoked about that as well. Yeah. So
Michaela, you can't be sure about the universe, right?
Well, we never know. At least, possibly the metaverse. I don't think there's been any SPACs in metaverse yet. So that's my role in today's session, but I'm also the CEO of Feminvest that's co-hosting this event, and we accelerate female ownership.
Brilliant, thank you. And over to you, Eric. Maybe you have an answer whether there's been a blockchain SPAC in the metaverse, but first maybe introduce yourself.
Right, so I was the previous chief investment officer of Arcane Assets, which is a Scandinavian cryptocurrency hedge fund. I have been a blockchain researcher for the most part of the last decade, and I'm an investor and researcher still. I'm also an investor in Hodl. And I'm a long-time Ethereum and Bitcoin community member.
Brilliant. So you are. Maybe since you are a long-time community member in Ethereum, I mean, the big thing in 2022, if someone asked me, except for all the bad stuff that happened with Celsius and Terra and so on, I would personally say, I mean, maybe even the biggest event in Ethereum's history has been the long expected merge. Because I do think that it's such an important thing in so many aspects. Do you just want to walk us through very quickly what happened and why it's important? And then after that we'll go over to Dotterland to comment on the implications you guys have on that. So maybe you can start. Give us some background, Eric.
Sure. So ever since 2014, when the description of the Ethereum system was published in blog posts and forum posts, it's always been discussed and described that the Ethereum system would eventually transition from using a proof of work consensus model to a proof of stake consensus model. And what that means is that instead of securing the Ethereum network by burning electricity, you secure it by locking up liquidity in the system. So there's a popular figure circulating where it said that this transition reduces the electricity usage of the system by 99.95%. Don't know about the exact correctness of that figure, but it's on that order of magnitude. So you don't burn electricity anymore, which means that there's no reason to be negatively inclined towards the Ethereum system based on its energy usage, because it wouldn't be a blip anymore on sort of the map of electricity consuming businesses. So Ethereum is now a green system. It's not there are no longer any valid like environmental disagreements that you can have with Ethereum as a cryptocurrency. So if you don't like Bitcoin, there's no reason for you not to like Ethereum if it's based on the energy use. So the merge was a very long anticipated event. It was a very technically complex event. It's almost like, you could say that it's like changing the wheels of a plane mid-air, but actually it's like changing the wheels of 5 airplanes at the mid-air at the same time, because in the Ethereum, you have 5 different consensus clients that all need to upgrade in lockstep, and there cannot be any bugs. So this was something that took a long time to implement. There was a lot of testing. There were hundreds of thousands of engineering hours that went into this, and a lot of people were afraid that there was going to be a bug. So far, there hasn't been any bugs, and the energy usage of the system has been reduced, and everyone is happy, pretty much.
Which is pretty crazy because, yeah, as you said, it's been a pretty significant operation that's been done. But so I want to just go to Dottyland and Ketley and Carrie. You guys actually met when you were working on pretty much the opposite of what you're doing today. You were trying to incentivize people to consume more, which is interesting in itself. But then it took a turn, and now you're working with getting people to consume less. Is that a correct kind of statement? And now that Ethereum is green, and there's, how does the sustainability landscape look like? What are the questions you get now? I mean, if people can't hate on Ethereum being pitch black and now it's green, how has it changed your landscape? And what are your thoughts on that?
Definitely. That was one of the main hurdles along the way when you were saying that you're working on something that's potentially having a huge positive impact. And the first question is, but blockchain is bad. Like it has such a huge energy consumption, and pretty much closed the discussion like immediately, because the means to get there were it's just, I think, so actively in people's mind as negative. And unfortunately a lot in the community that's actually already building towards the greener future and etc. So it was definitely something that's a hurdle. And I have to say that there's still some way to go, because obviously this side of the community is also not so aware of the merge, even because they're not so up to date with all the changes happening in the space. So I think we're still on the path to educate on how does the blockchain's footprint in general even comes together. Like, is it every singular transaction that's creating a larger footprint, or it's actually something that's pretty much anyways going on? And the question is, like, are we going to utilize this for a better and bigger purpose that has potentially a lot bigger impact? And I think this is essentially even not a question about whether to choose blockchain or not. It's essentially a question for every kind of project that wants to have a positive impact. Is the way how you get there, does it have a smaller footprint, smaller effort than the potential payoff, than the potential positive impact? And for us, it has been this question from the very first moment: is the potential impact bigger? And also, blockchain is just a technology being used, and it's a question for every other choice as well, for if you're choosing the means to get there. So yeah, I think to summarize, I think we're still on this. We need to educate on that part still, but I do think that it's making it a lot easier, and it's like bringing it a bit down in the agenda, and we can focus more on the potential positive side effects. But obviously there's, like, alongside the energy consumption, there are other negative perceptions very often related to blockchain and Web3 space as well, which is all the financial speculation and scams and like all of that that's currently happening in this young space. It has other sorts of perceptions. But I mean, there's a growing community of climate projects in this space that are believing that this is the technology that can be used, and it's expanding. So I think it's just with these good examples, if we're able to show that something good can be done with that, I think it will naturally start onboarding next projects as well.
Do you want to maybe walk us through one example of a project that you have worked with, or something that you have done that you're kind of like, oh, this if we extrapolate this might be the future? Or a vision? I think you might be muted.
Yeah, I was muted. You mean like what is a good example of a project that's already making like a good impact, right? Well, definitely one is ours.
Yeah, of course.
So I think there are several angles from which companies are building. For example, we want to make climate positive actions beneficial, so that we want what we're aiming towards is that if you are doing better choices, the example you brought in the beginning, if you're buying less, the vision of ours has been from the very beginning that this should actually be rewarded in a as fundamental level as possible, not just get like one coin for that, but it's more on a fundamental level, and also including like non-financial use cases, the benefits you're able to get from that. But there are also other projects who are making easier to have climate positive actions. For example, how to make offsetting easier in all the possible ways, because for normal people, it's still a bit of like, what does it even mean? Where do I have to go? Like, why do I have to do it? It's not the only solution for the climate crisis, just to make the disclaimer here, but it's still one of the ways how we can for quite a cheap price actually offset our footprint. And then there is also a lot of happening in on-chain voluntary carbon markets, and this has been actively being built for the past year, but for actually longer. And it has quite a lot of potential, I believe, as well, of making the voluntary carbon market transparent, standardized, and in a way also accessible to all the parties. So I think this has been also very interesting to look at. But all of that is also having, like, carbon markets in general also have they have many flaws still. And I think one new movement that we're starting to see also in the blockchain space is how to create carbon forward markets, so that it's not only about how to put carbon credits that exist on the chain, but also how to finance these projects who would want to get carbon credits in the future, and how would they have enough funds. So these are among the few, but it's actually a lot going on in how this change is being made currently. But many of these are still in very early stages.
Yeah. So I mean, I would like to jump to you, Nipasi, about the state of NFTs, because one of the criticisms NFTs have got is like, it's cheaper for me to send a sofa from New York to Sweden than to send an NFT in the metaverse, because the consumption has been high and the congestion has been high, and therefore the price of minting it has gone up. That hasn't really been affected so far, but hopefully with the surge and so on, even the prices will go down. But before we jump into NFTs, what's the state of NFTs? Are they dead? Like, is that a thing of the past? Are we gonna what's up? I mean, Norn is kind of banking on the fact that NFTs will be the cornerstone, but like, because Norn owns NFT.se, .dk, blah blah blah. So tell me, are NFTs dead, or what's up?
I think it's a really good question, right? And I'm going to go back a little bit to what Ketli said before, that there has been, a lot of kind of negative talk when it comes to the space. And I think that NFTs has been one part of driving that negativity. And when it comes to kind of, are NFTs dead? Definitely not. Some of the hype has gone down. And I would say that the hypes around kind of projects that has been just being throwing out there by people, you don't really know who they are, what they're aiming towards. But as always in a new space, whenever it's lucrative and it's new, people tend to come in and there are a lot of scams. I think that, you can see a decrease in the usage of NFTs or the NFTs that are being sold as projects, for example, on OpenSea. But that doesn't mean that NFTs are dead, because on the other hand, we're seeing quite a lot of companies, both in terms of like new business models, but also big brands coming into the space and using the technology around NFTs. And what I will do before just jumping into kind of the brands and what is happening in the NFT space, I just want to give a bit of a context around NFTs. I'm not sure how familiar people are with it. And simply said, to understand NFTs, you have to see the evolution of the internet. We first had what is called Web 1, and that was a paradigm where we call like the read paradigm. There was a few players who were kind of like broadcasting information on a few websites, and you had a large number of people who were reading this information. Then we moved into Web 2, where we are today. And Web 2 is all about read and write, while the write part is actually everyone more or less participating and creating content in the space. One of the big things here is that the content is owned by a few platforms. And now we're moving into what we're calling Web 3, which is enabled by blockchains and NFTs. And in Web 3, we're going from the write and read era to also adding in the ownership perspective. So now you can finally actually add in the digital ownership perspective. And this is enabled by NFTs. So if you would look at it and ask yourself, are we going to spend more time digitally? Does it make sense to have digital ownership? I think that everyone here would say yes. And that is the reason why NFTs aren't dead and will not be dead. So just, to get to that a bit. And I would say, if I can just, give a little bit of brief of what's happening in the space, we're seeing quite a lot of big brands coming in. Just to name a few, let's look at the fashion industry, for example. You are having brands as Balmain coming in, creating like membership NFTs to kind of, tap in closer to the community. We're also seeing that a lot of players, for example, Nike launching virtual Nike sneakers, selling for above 100,000 USDs. And Zara launching metaverse collections. And the reason is that people are seeing that, we're going to move into the metaverse. And while we are in the metaverse, we want to kind of be able to show who we are. Just as we do in our own homes, we want to show, the art we are hanging up on our walls or the clothing that we're wearing. And that is something that's going to happen. And to draw like a parallel line, the gaming industry has a skins, the concept of skins, which is a $50 billion industry. So then imagine all of us spending more time in the metaverse. What will that actually entail? And a lot of industries and a lot of players are seeing this as a concept that they want to take share of. Dolce & Gabbana is one of them, Zara is one of them, and Nike, as I mentioned.
Thank you. Johanna, do you agree with that assessment that we're stepping into the regime of ownership? Because when I'm reading on like about Logcast, this is kind of the text that I get. Like, Logcast was founded in Stockholm, Sweden, 2021 by two tech and entertainment entrepreneurs. I hope you agree with that. Born out of an idea to build a different kind of social network, one that put the power and control back in the hands of creators and its users. The platform is used by thousands of people, more than 30 countries. That is literally the dream of Web3, to my understanding. But like, why? Can you just double click on what it is you do, and why did you get traction? Because there's a lot of people trying out there.
Yeah, as I said, I'm a very entertaining entrepreneur. That's why. Okay. Yeah. I think since those numbers, we've grown to we're in more than 66 countries now, and I think everything that you guys have been talking about now, of course, I can write under all of that, because I think the hype and everything that happened last year about NFTs and Ethereum, like that is just the beginning, it's great that it was a hype, but this is not about a concept, it's about the new technology. And for us who build an entertainment platform, we build voice streaming and social media, then it makes it even more clear, I think, because how it's been up until now, you build your whole tech infrastructure, and then you build your audience base. Investors, even to us, said from the beginning, don't care about monetization, just go all in on building this user base. And we can still see social media entertainment platforms that have been out for over 10 years and haven't figured out how to monetize yet. Or they have, because the monetization is to make something you build on top of the users, which makes, I guess, the users the product. And there's a whole webinar we can have about making people the product. There's a lot of toxic behavior with manipulation and so on. But what we think is so beautiful with Web3 and NFTs is that, I mean, now we're building the tech infrastructure on blockchain. Then, thanks to the blockchain and NFTs, the whole monetization layers is first. So then we just add our community on top of that. So everything they produce is already by default a digital asset. And suddenly everything they create, they own. They don't need to figure out how to monetize it. It's a digital asset by default. And for us who talks, we are spoken audio platform. So it's about what you experience, it's about what you think, it's about conversations. And I'm a big believer that everything I am is about things I've experienced out there. So suddenly my experiences and my thoughts has a value. And I mean, I think that's about time that what we experience and our thought has a value on it. So you can give thoughts to people and so on. Yeah.
You guys talk about non-fungible memories, which is cool. Do you think that, like, your users, do they know that they're doing something on the blockchain, or is it just there in the background, or like how much do you emphasize that? Because on your website you don't emphasize it that much. And that's
No.
I'm assuming, because you're a thinking person, that's a deliberate choice. It's not something you accidentally did. So walk us through that.
Yeah, in this crowd, I love to talk about blockchain, NFT, ownership with investors, media, super fun, important. But for, like, I think maybe 99% of our population are not passionate about Web3 yet. And they don't need to understand, they don't even maybe care about ownership of data. But we are building long-term, and we are a voice social Web3 platform. So for us and what we build and how we educate, that's important. But right now, we are out there to help people use their voice more. I think when we talk about text and picture, we are so used to read and write the web through that we were just talking about. And we're so used to being two-way. But when it comes to audio, think about it. You have music, podcasting, audiobooks. It's still so much broadcasting. It's like Web 1. So for us, that we are opening up and untapping the microphone here, it's time for the people listening to audio to also talk now. So we feel that there's such a big gap where we want to democratize voice. So we speak more about that, even though as soon as you put up a profile on Logcast, you have a wallet. We create that for you. You can make things NFTs by just one tap, but in our communications, it's enough to talk about start using your voice. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll come back to that later, because I do want to talk about the focus on the tech part and not so much the consumer. Before I do that, though, I would like to just hand it over to Michaela. I mean, also full disclosure, I'm the CEO of Huddle SPAC, but like you as a chairwoman, you decided to list a very traditional product, like as well, it's not super traditional. It's to go to a traditional market in something that's potentially very, you know, new and exotic. Like, why is it important for like blockchain companies to be in a public environment? What is that's my first question, and then I would like to know what kind of stuff is Huddle SPAC looking for, and also maybe we'll get to the third question, but like, is it super difficult now, or is it easier? Like, just give us as an insight on the landscape right now.
Yeah, so let's start with the first question, and I'll
you can take in whatever order you want to.
Yeah, you know, the exciting thing with actually bringing innovation into the traditional space is that you make room for even more innovation, but also possibly like educate the financial markets about, you know, those new trends. And we've seen quite a lot of traditional financial markets, including blockchain, when it was hyped, especially a lot of the large banks were making sure to earn money on blockchain initiatives. But the thing with this kind of initiative that we do with Huddle SPAC that's really exciting is that we try to move away from the speculative dialogues that are usually first brought up when you talk about blockchain. If it's not ownership, I'm going to say, because that's another frequent introductory topic. But we are also focusing on the values. And I think it's so clear in the conversations that we have with the entrepreneurs and the experts in this panel already, that this is actually value that businesses can benefit from, industries can revolutionize based on what the technology can bring to the table, rather than focusing on exchanges and, you know, what's happening with currencies. So that's I think that's why we were so highly welcomed as well by investors. Obviously, we were highly oversubscribed, etc. But then the last question you asked was in regards to what was that now?
What kind of stuff? Like, yeah, what's the general?
What we look for.
I mean, we see turmoil on the market. It seems to be quite a lot of blood. Like, how is it to be a SPAC and try to acquire stuff? And what are we looking at?
Yeah. So if we start with what we look for, it's exactly that: businesses that are adding value to their industry with thinking in a new way about how to utilize the values that blockchain brings. It's as easy as that. And across EMEA, of course, the market has been affecting us, but mostly actually the currencies are sorted. I don't think that the confidence in what blockchain brings as such. We still see high valuations, and I know that some of you have raised capital throughout this markets, and it's more difficult for everyone to raise capital because investors are a bit hesitant, but it's not affecting blockchain more than any other industry. So we were kind of the good side, raising capital in a bull market, and then now we've got the money in the bank. We've got a lot of interesting businesses out there that continue to work and strive to, fulfill their goals. What we do see, and I think that one effect is that we are shifting our focus a little bit on, maybe not going for the highest risk companies, the earliest companies, but more a little bit mature. We need to find some sort of maturity in the companies that we look for. And also, the most important thing for us is the value for our shareholders. And that always has to be the case when you look at the stock market. So it could be, and we have signed that we are actively looking for blockchain companies, but we are also open for value-driven businesses where you could possibly apply blockchain as a second phase, or where we see that the value would definitely benefit our investors, and that's the most important thing.
Sounds good. So you're not constrained by just getting blockchain stuff. I understand. So we've kind of like walked through a half an hour now. I would like to, if possible, if it's too soon, just let me know. But I would like to kind of start shifting the focus for 2023 and see if we have any kind of, you know, big insights. And also before we end this conversation, I would kind of want to ask you guys if you think we'll see all-time highs during 2023, or if it's just going to be sideways action. And so have a think while you, Eric, what are your kind of projections for 2023 in terms of trends? Is it stable coins taking off? Is it regulatory framework? Is it what's happening in 2023? Can you see any trends right now?
So I think it's like one of the exciting.
Sorry to interrupt you. I saw just a rainbow chart in the chat. So maybe you want to explain what that is a bit later. One of your fanboys.
So one of the exciting and interesting things about this industry is that I think that no one could have predicted that one of the leaders of the last bull market would be pictures of apes. And that's one of the things about this industry that doesn't matter how much you study, how much you learn, there are always things coming out of the left field to surprise you. And to me, that's the innovation of cryptocurrencies. They are permissionless platforms where anyone can create any type of financial instrument or tokenized asset, and you never know what's going to fly and when it's going to take off. So I think the people I speak with a lot of like professional investors in this space, and I ask them, so what do you think is the next trend that is going to kickstart DeFi and Web3 again? And a lot of them right now are interested in gaming, for example. So we saw by the end of this last bull market that there were like play to earn, move to earn, Axie Infinity, and like kind of real world and digital games and metaverse games that were popping up. And there are ways to integrate that with tokens and NFTs and create small economies. But I wouldn't necessarily say, or I wouldn't necessarily even assume that I'm able to predict or anticipate exactly what it is. I think that the way that you have to, the way that I behave in this market, in this industry, is that this is a great time to learn, to educate yourself, to study and prepare yourself so that when the market turns around, you're able to understand the direction where the market is moving in very quickly by giving yourself like a base understanding of this space. But I can't say for sure. Like I have my own, I have a couple of companies that I'm investing in. The types of tokens related to Web3 and NFTs that I'm most interested in at the moment are these creator tokens. So I do think that there's a huge potential for content creators to tokenize exclusive access to their fame or to the content that they produce, in terms of, like, you can just imagine something simple like there's someone that you follow a lot. What if the access to their closed friends list on Instagram was regulated by the ownership of a specific token? It turns the relationship between content consumers and content creators so that the content consumers are no longer just consumers, but they become more like talent scouts. So when you're looking for, when you notice someone who's, you can see has a lot of talent in a specific domain that you understand very clearly, you don't have to just become a follower. You can also become an investor by buying up assets that will be more attractive as this content creator grows and becomes more famous. So that could be like an exclusive list on their like close friends list to get access to what they're doing in their private lives. But it could also be like, you could one gamer, for example, could tokenize a slot to be on the team, like let's say you're playing League of Legends and there's a 5-man team. Every weekend you play a more fun game. So you can that fifth spot in the team just for that game on a weekly basis is something that you can tokenize, and a fan can potentially acquire that. So there are going to be new ways for like content creators to monetize their fame and to bootstrap their career, and there's also going to be ways for the audience to have exposure to particular content creators as they grow and become more famous. So that's one area that I'm looking at.
So content creator tokens, and basically that's one of your conviction investments. Do you have another path that you're investing in? What's the next DeFi? Do you have a new space? Because like 2018, there was like crypto, and then I feel like 2020 you had all these subcategories of blockchain popping out. Can you hint that we have a new NFT, new DAO, new DeFi, new something, or that you want to share?
Yeah, so I invest a lot in regular crypto infrastructure. So I'm one of the ecosystems that I'm investing in heavily at the moment is on the roll-up side. So this is a new tech. Yeah, it's so scaling solutions for Ethereum and other DeFi chains, basically. So there's a new type of scalability paradigm in the blockchain space called modularity. So it's a different way of basically building scalable architecture for Web3. I'm also I'm a board member for the Starknet Foundation. Starkware has built a so-called ZK rollup, which uses zero knowledge proof to scale blockchain platforms. So I invest in a lot of the architecture of different blockchain platforms, and there's bridge technologies and liquidity aggregators in those on those platforms that I also invest in. But in terms of like end user applications, this content creator tokens is the one that I have enough conviction in this bear market to actually focus on. We'll see which other domains are become attractive as the market turns around.
Yeah. So with Dotterland, Carrie or Ketley, you can decide who wants to answer this question. Like, what are your kind of like clients / partners? What are they looking for? Are you the ones kind of telling them what they should be looking for? And if so, what should they be looking for 2023 or 2024?
I'll take this one. Well, I think first we have a somewhat probably biased view, but I guess everyone does.
We all do, yeah.
But yeah, I think we are purely for trying to make what we're building better and ultimately having a wider scale impact. I think there are kind of 3 streams that create the most excitement. Ketley might want to add a 4th or 5th one after I've talked this through, but first one is a little bit what's been touched upon here before. It does relate to this kind of content ownership, but actually more deeply for us, because we are working with identity, and I'm going to come back to identity itself in a second, but how can essentially identity that is based on positive behavior or integrates like some form of data about behavior, how can that be utilized in decentralized social? So there's a lot going on in Web3 social. New platforms are popping up left, right, and center. But it came as quite a surprise for us when we went talking to some of them. Okay, how can we use the Dotterland Impact Self as a kind of social signaling tool to essentially enable the account owner or the content creator to ultimately be rewarded more or earn more, whichever. We went talking to them, and then to our pretty big surprise, we realized the algorithm side in all those platforms is still at the very beginning. Which is, of course, for us an opportunity, but it also was a bit like, oh, we're not quite there yet. So at times it feels the space is, taking in 1 month, suddenly everything has changed, like as if it's been 10 years. And at other times you kind of have a surprise, like, oh, we're not there yet, if it's not your immediate space. But I think there will be a lot happening in the Web3 social. Content ownership and benefiting from it, and data ownership is part of it, but the other part is definitely like, what can we actually do with those algorithms? How can we integrate individual positive behavior, be it climate positive or something else positive? How can we integrate that into that algorithm, and so on and so on? This is not, we are obviously not in the Web3 social per se. We are kind of trying to utilize that as one use case, but it's not our like everyday domain, but it's extremely exciting, like what else can be done there. Then the other stream is definitely identity. We today are doing the Impact Self, which is an identity. It's a non-transferable token. It's similar to what has been sometimes called the soulbound token, but of course nobody has. I'm pretty sure everyone in this chat is familiar with it or has heard that terminology, but it actually turns out, there is no full universally agreed definition for the soulbound token, because Vitalik spoke of it as this kind of, he bolstered it out what it should have, but it hasn't, what he bolstered out isn't entirely in existence. So I think there will be a lot happening in the identity sphere in terms of the technology and the contracts, and in terms of also making those user-owned identities more secure and actually more, again, beneficial and functional for the user. Because today we are kind of all, you could say there's maybe more being done about, again, data ownership and privacy, but it's still, again, in the early days. Let's see where we are in 12 months time when we have this conversation again. I really hope we'll have moved, a lot. And then the third stream is, this is where we're really biased, obviously, is regenerative finance, which is kind of grown out of DeFi, I guess you could say, but it takes the principles of DeFi and merges them with regenerative economics, and it integrates kind of positive and negative externalities, and brings nature-backed assets into the equation. So, much of our kind of modern history economics, I'm gonna really generalize now, forgive me for this like oversimplification, but much of our modern history economics has been kind of built around this like what you could call a petrol dollar. Our markets, like petroleum based assets and kind of non-regenerative assets have defined a lot of our markets behaviors, and regenerative finance is kind of trying to bring back the balance so that we are more focused on regenerating and conserving. And I understand, like Ketle and I are pretty nerdy about it. It's not everyone's like everyday cup of tea, but I think what is exciting about this is that, of course, it's not going to be, like, let's say, we're all not going to be functioning in the kind of refi mode from tomorrow onwards, but even shifting that conversation there and seeing many nature-backed assets and currencies being built, and like I'll bring one example, like Cello blockchain. Now they are, I don't know if they've achieved this target yet, or the goal is to achieve it next year. So I don't want to put down a wrong fact, but they are essentially trying to become a 40% natural asset backed stablecoin. I think that 40% is a massive percentage. So just having this conversation with that is becoming like wider and wider, and also proving that models like this can be built, can be financially kind of sustained and sustainable, and kind of start competing with kind of more traditional economic models. There is, I think we're just seeing the beginning of that, and this is what really, I mean, let's do another Zoom call for 5 hours about this, please.
I think we should. I feel like there's a lot of things to double click on there. Nippy, what are the trends for 2023? Will there be any trends for 2023? Will there be new giraffes and apes? Or what's happening? What's up?
So I would say that we will probably not see that many of apes, Eric, hopefully at least. No, but I say that there is a major trend happening where you see that NFTs are being used kind of as a basis for new business models, and shaking up kind of a lot of old school industries, one being the music industry. An example is now that there's a Swedish player called Another Block. You have a global player called the Royals. What you can do is that you can actually invest in music through their platforms. So you buy NFTs and you invest in music that way. So I own, full disclosure, I own like a NFT by The Weeknd, the song Acquainted, which means that every 6 months I will be paid out royalties for what has been played during the last 6 months of this song. So I think that is a really new way of investing, and that is something that you can use NFTs for. And I think that will be a really big kind of game changer going forward. There's another like area where this is done as well is you can start investing in sports. So, you find a really, really good football player in Brazil, and instead of having to use a sports agents, you can instead start investing in him, helping him, get everything that he needs to kind of be the best at his sports and focus on what he needs to do. And then at the end of the day, when he starts playing in Real Madrid, suddenly you start sharing the royalties. So this is something that I think will happen more and more. And I think it's really interesting because you're taking away a lot of middle hands. But the most important part of this is that you're actually moving from having, an audience to making them a really hardcore community, but also making them investors in you or whatever you're doing. And I think that is something that is really interesting. Just imagine the power in that. I am listening to Acquainted like 50 times per day. So yeah. I think
Listen
that will be
to earn. There's going to be an
exactly.
insert to earn.
Exactly.
But I mean, one of the things that I think it's all very inspiring that like the future of this technology is that you can do a lot of stuff. But like, honestly, when I speak to people, one of the first things I ask them, like, do you even have like a wallet? And most people don't. So I personally think the biggest thing, a contribution we can do is to just actually bring people on, like literally bring people on. And
that's exactly what we're trying to do from Northside. So, just to get, as Eric said, get your kind of facts straight, start educating yourself, jump in on nft.se, DKFINO, and, read and start understanding what this space is about. But also we really want to help people, to take the first steps. How do you put up your wallet? You need to kind of get people to understand that it's not so scary and so difficult to be able to participate in everything that Web3 will be about.
Hopefully in the future, it's when you have a wallet, it's not just to hold your coins, it's actually to give you different types of access, because that hasn't been the case historically. You just have a wallet to store your coins, and you don't really interact with any websites more than, swapping one token to the other or transferring stuff basically. But Johanna, do you, with Logcast, are you kind of planning to having like Web3 access? Because right now, to my knowledge, the voice and the audio you make, they're turned into NFTs, right?
You have a choice.
Yeah, you have a choice. Okay. Why do you have a choice?
Because right now we thought it was most important to make it easy. Not everyone can set up a wallet and have it fully decentralized. So we decided to help everyone create a wallet, but it's custodial at the moment. And everything you create, you can decide to just release and have a monetization model where you just, pay to stream, simple. Or if you want to make it so you can own it, you turn it into a non-fungible memory, and then it's part of of course, blockchain, and you own that. And what we see moving forward is that it's not so much about buying or streaming specific content. It's, you just said, it's about access. That's why it's interesting that we make our whole profile, our digital mind, our digital identity. And that is about accessing to circles. It's about accessing to groups and members, and then maybe content can turn into a way to access things. But that's how we see, and that's what we build for. And that's also gonna revolutionize social media, because it's not about the big feed of algorithm and audience sizes anymore. It's about accesses to groups. And that could be small, tiny, intimate groups. So we are exploring that path, and yeah, that's super exciting.
That is indeed exciting. We actually have a few questions from the audience. Being mindful of time, I'm gonna try to, maybe we can manage to do two of them. I'll start with the regulation. Anyone, like, so we have a question from a person, I hope he's not named iPhone, but in this chat he is. What's the status of government intervention regulation in Web3? Any idea what we can expect going forward? Like, basically, what happens 2023? Do we have any big blockers? Someone that feels that you can give a short answer, please do. Okay, I guess that says it all. I suggest the person Googles what to expect, because I agree, it's not a short answer. We'll jump to the next question because we have 2 minutes, which kind of is from Anna. That's, what will be the reasons for blockchain and cryptocurrencies to kind of like do a comeback? Like, what's the catalyst for the next bull run? Is it the Fed? Is it the S&P 500? Or is it the technology? What is it? Anyone? Speculations?
Of course, my perspective here will be NFTs. The more people kind of understand how you can use it, and I also think it's the step in, for everyone to kind of understand the value. So yeah. I think NFTs will be one of the ways that this will actually start booming again when you start putting it into other contexts. Thank you.
Mike, what do you think? Oh, Michaela.
Yeah, I definitely see that it's the more businesses that actually work with blockchain solutions integrated into their business models, adding value across all the values that blockchain brings that we have spoken about. Then it's going to move into to the mainstream. One day it will be, like everyone has a blockchain integration, because the whole space is all about that. It is about transparency, everyone jacking in. So I'm convinced that it's that's going to be one of the progresses, so to say.
Do you, Eric, want to, or sorry, anyone wants to add to what will be the catalyst?
Yeah, I can add, yeah, that yes, you also asked in your previous question of like, when will the next bull market be, and sort of it's time back to this question, and I think it's very much currently the building mode happening in this space where companies who were able to fundraise or in whichever way from VCs or from their communities have the funds now to actually build something that has real utility and value. I think it's the main catalyst, like on a very high level, is to create real tangible value. And I think a lot of that value is also still directed to inside the Web3 communities. It's already assuming that you're in this space. So I think another important layer definitely for the next bull is to create solutions that will add the unique value to people who are outside of Web3, who you're able to go and say, like, this is something you can't do in Web2. And this is, for all of those reasons, better done on blockchain and Web3. So I think it's about like going to this basic value propositions that people normally want to have. So I think this is very much the catalyst there.
So I think what we can do maybe is we can keep the stream open for a few extra minutes and try to answer because there's two more questions. But for everyone that needs to leave, you're free to leave. And thank you so much for today. Thank you, Feminvest, for hosting it together with Hodl SPAC. Thank you for all the panelists and for everyone joining. It's been lovely having
Can I just say if I look at the guest list in this event, it's so many women. That's so cool.
Yes. Yeah, and the only dude has long hair, so I guess we're seeing trends here. That's good. So yeah. So I would actually then there was a few other questions. One was before we jump onto that, Eric, what do you think would be the next catalyst for the next bull run?
I didn't want you to ask me this question because I'm too old in this space to have like these.
Dude, you look like 22.
Yes, but I mean, I would like to say, it's about building tangible values and getting real business models. But we are in the digital domain. We're in the digital world, and we capture the value that the rest of the market is unable to capture. So we have always lived on like the extension that the macro environment creates. So it's when you have money that you don't know, like if you have money that you don't feel like you want to spend on a house or on trips or like your most important expenses, the rest of that value, that's when you start to think, okay, do I invest in stocks? Do I invest in currencies? Or do I invest in crypto? That's where like 99% of the value that gets invested in crypto comes from. That's why our market is so bound to market cycles. We are getting punished harder than other markets because we are more the speculation element in crypto is a much bigger one than it is in equities, precious metals, stocks, or anything like that. So it's hard to say that we're going to get like a catalyst on the engineering side or in the use case side that will be able to penetrate these extremely strong macro forces. So like the unfortunate reality is that we sort of need the market to turn around before any of these things that we build now can really take off. But the one thing that I'll say though is that when this market takes off, it goes extremely quickly. And what your choice can be here is that, do you want to be the guy that's trying to figure out how the things work and where the ropes are when that happens? Or do you want to be a person that is in a position of being able to teach other people? Like you can actually become extremely successful in this industry just by being like 6 months ahead of everyone else. So if you get started in the space 6 months earlier and you already know which platforms that you're trading on, and you already know like why proof of stake is good or bad, like you've already made up your choice about that. And then you can become a person that educates the masses, the hundreds of thousands, the millions of people that come later, and you can actually build a business. You can make a career out of it. I've seen tons of people that just get into this space like 6 months earlier than these big masses do, and they're able to create businesses and they're able to become extremely successful. Many of them actually become way more successful than I've been when I've been here for 10 years just by being like 6 months earlier and actually capitalizing on it. So I wouldn't say, it's stay away until the bull market comes back. I would say like if you have an interest in the space, this is one of the most lucrative domains in the entire world to become knowledgeable in.
And in very few industries, as you said, you can join, and then 6 months later you can be an expert and potentially be part of shaping the future of that industry, which is pretty rare. I mean, if you go into distribution or normal Web 2 tech, your path is already kind of like it's already there. You know what to do. Whereas in this industry, everything is just pretty chaotic at points. So I do want to kind of do like a raise of hands. We're going to continue for maybe 2-3 minutes of do you think if you exclude the Fed, the S&P, all of that, do you think that we will see upward movement on ETH 2023? Or do you think it's going to be later? It's those two choices. If you think it's 2023, obviously not financial advice, you don't have to, you can do that. That means you don't want to, this is basically a fuck off, I don't want to answer that question. But if you feel comfortable, raise your hand if you think it's 2023 we'll see upward movement on ETH as the asset. And I'll ask the later question after that. So 2023, raise your hand if you think it's going to be upward movement. Okay, interesting. A pretty bearish bunch of people, except for the person that might have confirmation biased. So yeah, cool.
24.
24. Okay, 24. Interesting. Out of curiosity, when you guys speak to people about the choice of blockchain, what is the blockchain if I ask you, Carrie and Ketley, what is the blockchain? Is it only ETH, or is it like Solana, or what is the blockchain people talk about? Just a final up question.
Okay. I think it's not only ETH, but it also depends on which people we're talking about, right? If we're talking about outside of this space, then yes, it's mostly Ethereum and Bitcoin. It's top of mind. It's basically, there isn't even real knowledge that there might be like more, or what's the difference even between the two. But I think the blockchain space is getting very interesting and diverse, and in actually choosing to which blockchain to build. It's we're just currently going this through. That we have the first version of our product on Polygon, but we are actually in the process of moving it to Celo. And also the reasons for making this decision, it's been a pretty long and interesting process. Like, on the one hand, you're looking at where all the people are, where's the liquidity, how much of there's the potential market that people are actually going to use that. But on the other hand, there's also, obviously the footprint element there has been from the beginning, but then it's also the ecosystem of the blockchain. Like, what is it offering to its builders? And I think for us, it's been quite interesting to see, as Celo's ecosystem is pretty young itself. It's also like very hands-on, helping its builders. So it's much closer relationship between the blockchain foundation itself and the builders on top when it's the earlier phase. So I think the questions there are so multifaceted, and it's not only about the footprint or only about liquidity. It's interesting, and everyone will have their best choice probably.
Yeah. Mike, Michaela, one last thing before I'm gonna give the word to you.
My kid's just running to the room.
Sorry?
My kid's running into the room. It's vobbing time. So I just turned off because I was...
So basically, do you want to say anything before we say goodbye?
No, actually, I think it's been a really good talk, and, different perspectives, and... if you have any feedback or any thoughts on how we can make this even better, then please send it to us. And thank you, everyone, for contributing with your brain powers.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, guys.
So thank you so much. Thank you again for joining. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.